11 days. That was an awesome experience as a county commissioner, too, by the way. How many new commissioners are in the room? Wow. Okay. Well, I don't know if it's best to start this off or to finish it, but I hope that we accomplish a couple things. In regards to the gas tax, I was a brand new guy when I agreed to do that, and now I've got 2 years in. Oh man, has it been a challenge to make that revenue up? But at least we know that it went back into local Indiana, into the local Indiana economy. I spent 19 years as a state trooper up in Hamilton County before I was the sheriff for 2 terms up there, and saw such exponential growth from when I first started there in the early 1980s through the end of 2010. Unbelievable. Many of you are experiencing similar growth. It might be an economy, but it's similar growth that I feel for you. But most importantly, I applaud what you're setting out to do. For those of you that have previously served in elected office and those that will and are here in a few days, I don't know whether to give you my condolences or my best wishes, but it's somewhere in the middle, and it's been quite a journey. And I think you'll look back on this time and realize that it was absolutely valuable. Part of the thing that I want to talk about today is what you guys and gals already know about. But over my 30 years, it's amazing the things that I've seen people do. And it was about 30 years ago, 2 weeks ago, when my dad, who was an Indiana trooper up at the Dunes Park Post in northern Indiana where I grew up, made me promise not to become cynical like him over time. And I'm pleased to report to him, he's still living, that I'm not. But frankly, folks, I'm not quite sure how. I think everyone would agree that our world is in an absolute disarray. From faraway places that few of us will ever be able to understand, to what's happening on the national stage, to what's happening on the state stage, what's happening in our local communities. And there's never been more of an important time for us to do the right thing. Confidence in government is an all-time low, probably as low as it's been in the last 40, 45 years. So now is the time. I'm not one to say I'm just going to kick that can down the road and let the next generation fix our ills. I would suspect and even challenge folks to say, you know what, we own this. We're the ones responsible for the way in which the world is. I'm 52 years old, and my parents left a much safer, kinder world for me than I'm leaving for my daughter, who's a sophomore at IU. And I think, particularly on the tail end of the baby boomer generation, need to take some responsibility. How do we do that? Well, I think we start by doing it through individual accountability. All of you are leaders in your communities. And when I look back over the course of the last 23 months now, the governor didn't tell me what I was about to do. And he didn't know either early on. But the things that happen around Indiana on any given day would rock the conscience of the soul of most people. Whether that be internally within our organizations in respective places, whether that be externally. Sensationalized media, 24-hour news coverage, and all of those pieces and parts equal this total sum of chaos in our societies. And it's real. It's absolutely real. I had no idea what happened around this state on any given day. And now I'm stunned each and every day, each day. I've also learned that since we're well represented here with you folks from north, central, and southern Indiana, that there are 3 states in Indiana, north, central, and south. And every one of those areas, from my view, my perspective of the world, requires a different level of policing. From rural Indiana to that place that's semi-rural, semi-urban, to that heavily urban environment requires very different things from us as your state police, as your state police agency. Keep in mind, we have the same number of troopers we had in November of 1984 when I started. So the responsibilities are absolutely immense. And what does all that mean to you? Well, I told you just very briefly, I won't get on that soapbox of my philosophical opinion of the world, but I will tell you that from the time I was a little guy, understanding that my dad was a policeman, till now, I've always believed that we need to be in your communities. We don't need to be out writing tickets because we can. We need to be out writing tickets because we should. We don't have to have this persona about us that our job is to take people to jail, because it's not. Unfortunately, it's a part of it, no question about it. But your trust in us has eroded over time. And we can go all the way back to 1991 to Rodney King, 94, O.J. Simpson, and gosh darn, currently today. We as a profession, we as a unit are completely under attack from all over the world. We must reconnect with you. We must develop your confidence. We must develop your trust. If we don't, we lose. I am a great big proponent and a person that spent a tremendous amount of time studying violence in America. From a movie theater to a synagogue to a church to a house to a business, wherever it might be, but most predominantly in all of our minds are schools. Folks, and again, I'm going to get back on task here in just a second, but about 90% of the time we knew that was going to happen. We as a society knew that was about to happen. It's not okay that we don't say something. It's not okay. Why is that? Well, again, I'll take some responsibility. We've not done a very good job of breaking a wall down to communicate with you so you feel comfortable talking to us. There's a direct nexus to this message today with each of you because I want you to have that confidence. I want you to know that our job is not always just to put handcuffs on someone and take them to jail. If you know something happening in your community that's weird, that's suspicious, by golly, it is. Tell somebody dressed funny like me, whether they're in blue, green, brown, or grill suit. It makes absolutely no difference. If we don't do that, we are in big, big trouble. Big, big trouble. I think if government proper came in and said, you can't worship the way you historically have, you'd figure out a way. Or they came in and said, we're going to close all of our schools, you'd figure it out. But I would also suggest to you that if they said there is no more law enforcement in America, what would happen in very short order? We own the disconnect. I'm asking you and begging you and pleading with you to please help us fix that. Please. Please. Okay, I'm going to stop because I'll get all fired up. I won't do that to you. This conference, as well as a couple other ones around the state, mainly with newly elected county officials, has an absolute nexus to the ISP proper. Whether that be from crime and corruption, whether that be in organized crime, whether that be in theft, whether that be in diversion, whether that be in bribery, whatever it might be, we are the agency that comes into most counties around Indiana and municipalities around Indiana to investigate them. It's amazing to me the number of those that I receive. Now, the only thing that is required is there's a formal request that comes to me that I give to senior staff to vet, and then we push those investigations out again, north, central, and south. There are two folks in the back of the room that are a whole lot smarter than me and know a whole lot more about this. One of them is Sergeant Troy Stanton. Troy, would you raise your hand, please? And to Troy's right is Lieutenant Donna Elam. And they will be here, and we'll have some time for question and answer when I'm done, and I'll ask them to come forward. They're the ones that have been very, very involved, and Donna actually directs these investigations from around the state. But currently there are one sergeant and 5 detectives that we have that do nothing but these kinds of crimes, generally with a direct correlation or connection to an elected official in Indiana. Each of them are certified fraud examiners, so there's a tremendous amount of history there. There's a tremendous amount of knowledge there, and a boatload of history. So what you think you might ask them, I can almost rest assured, you can rest assured that they've had that question before or have had some type of an investigation connected to your question. So I hope you don't hesitate to ask. The relationship with the State Board of Accounts is strong, along with the U.S. Attorney's Office, with the FBI, Secret Service. That list can go on and on and on. There's never been more important that we have relationships both looking down into our communities, sideways to our state partners, and then looking up to those federal partners that we have currently. We must continue to facilitate those relationships, and we will. Ultimately, each of you are responsible. Whether that be the county commissioner, the auditor, the recorder, wherever your sphere of influence lives, you're ultimately responsible. It's daunting too, folks. It's absolutely daunting, particularly with the number of public records requests that you get, that we get, thousands and thousands and thousands of them a year. And how do you manage all of those requests? The safety and security documents, the files and databases, but most importantly, personal and confidential information. Most importantly is personal and confidential information. Now, that doesn't trump the necessity of tracking every single dollar that comes through the door, and we'll get to that here in just a second. A code of ethics, do you have that? Are you going to have one? And it's got to start with the person you see in the mirror. It must start with you. If it doesn't, then the paradigm is going to get kicked out of balance, and by golly, once it's gone, it's almost impossible to bring it back. Highly, highly would encourage a very strong, very enforceable code of ethics that will set that benchmark of your expectations for those that work for you, and ultimately for the citizens that elected you. Ethical and lawful conduct. If you have to ask if it is, it probably isn't. If you have to ask if it is, it probably isn't. All of you are very smart. You've decided to step out of your norm, of that personal space that we all could have if we chose, and you decided to step out in front of this. You are the face of government. Each and every one of you are the face of government, and the influence that you have is tremendous, tremendous in your local communities. Please don't ever lose sight of that. In all of my years, 8 years that I spent working 80 hours a week in an elected office, I caught myself periodically getting over to that right limit or that left limit, and I have to reel myself back in. And I had really strong staff around me that jerk a knot in my chain and bring me back to dead center. So I think it's very natural. But I hope that you understand and relate and talk about those right and left limits for all the folks that answer to you. Crazy important over time. What are some of the high-risk areas in your respective offices? And these, I suspect, would touch every single one of you. Cash reconciliation. You'll hear from the folks in the back here in a little bit, I suspect, with some questions. That is really, 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 really important. And we'll talk about mitigating those concerns here in just a moment. Attendance. The ghost employment situations, the ghost employment laws are a large part of what we do, and the allegations that come to my office that ultimately get investigated. Privacy and email. We, as all of you know, live in such a dynamic electronic era. And if I have a problem with my iPhone, it's my 20-year-old daughter, or if I had one, my 5-year-old son, because he or she, from that age range, have the innate ability to pick up an electronic device and be able to use it better than we do, or at least better than I can. So that is absolutely an issue today. We communicate in email so regularly, so frequently, and so carefree that sometimes we forget that what we're about to send is a public document and available for discovery. It can bite you very, very, very quickly. Do you have a personal use policy? And I can tell you that we do not, but we soon will. A personal use policy of electronic communication that's owned by the county or the municipality. Can't enforce something if it's not a policy, so I would strongly encourage you to start thinking about that as well. And I will say that very few municipalities or entities, even in corporate America, have those policies in place. But we all carry a laptop around with us that has the capacity to record a tremendous amount of data, and you'll never know. Whether that be in a photograph, in an audio recording, a still photograph, video, whatever it might be. Everybody carries these. Should you conduct random and unannounced audits? Yes, 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 you should. It would prevent a tremendous amount of work and a tremendous amount of embarrassment. If you don't do that, please, I would highly encourage you to do that. You set the tone. I have learned over the course of the last nearly 2 years now and almost 3,000 people that my only job is culture. That's my only job. 18, 19-hour days are the norm, and at the end of the day, I'm so tired I can't hardly drive home, and I think, what have I gotten done? And I can't think of anything. But I know that my job is culture, first and foremost. It's the culture, it's the tone. And boy, there are days I fail miserably, just fail absolutely miserably. But that tone is so critically important. When my boss, when the governor called me on December the 18th of 2012, I vaguely remember the phone call. And he said it was 12 or 13 minutes long. I don't think that's accurate because I remember none of it. But he changed my life in the last couple of minutes when he asked me if I would accept the position to become the 20th superintendent of the Indiana State Police. And that part I remember. I didn't know what to say, so he said, by the silence, I assume you accept. And of course I did, and I had no idea where the office was. I had no idea where to park. I didn't know where the bathrooms were. I was in that office one time in the late 1980s and left 3/4 of my rear end there and swore I'd never go back. And by golly, I'm responsible for it. Now what do I do? And I realized I got to set the tone. I've got to set the tone. The other thing that he told me was to work outside, quote, even the perception of impropriety. He preaches even working outside of even the perception of impropriety and servant leadership are two tenets of his style, and that I've come to appreciate them so very much. And I didn't really understand what they were, but I can rest assured I know what they are now because I hear it from him all the time, and I'm glad. That's the tone. That seems to work in a paramilitary organization like the ISP, any local municipality around Indiana or around the nation, and I can't help but to think it couldn't help you in some form or fashion in the environments from where you come. There are a lot of reasons that folks commit or have been alleged to have committed a white-collar crime. Pressure. I think pressure is attached to everything that I've talked with you about over the course of the last 10 or 15 minutes. We feel unbelievable pressure, probably greater pressure than any generation before us, for all the reasons we previously discussed. Underappreciated. Do they feel that way or are they? I don't know the answer. Do they feel that way or are they? There might be a perception that management is unethical or unfair. Is it real or is it not? Does it need to be addressed or does it not? Is it just the way that employee's always been or is it not? They commit a crime because they feel like, because of the above, that they're owed or entitled to whatever they did. And this summary is based on real situations, real criminal cases that have occurred around Indiana, and they don't intend, maybe, to do what they did, but they felt entitled to do it based on the above, you see. It's a vicious cycle. The money was only borrowed, it would be paid back. What happens? It becomes a slippery slope, and that ball gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and eventually someone is going to say something someplace at some time. By reconciling statements for out-of-the-ordinary signs, do you have so much confidence in that person? Could be a relative, could be a dear friend, a lifelong dear friend, that he or she has done that job for so long that no one else can do it. Ugh. Ordinary signs. No one should have that much authority or that much power, to include you. There should be a check and balance with everything that you do so that it's constantly reconciled. Human error is human error, but it's not hard to find out there were intentional acts over time that caused this end result. Crazy important that you do not do that on your own. Maybe you can, but you should not. Be suspicious and trust your instincts. Gosh darn, we're all adults, and 9 times out of 10 our gut feeling's right. I preach that to my daughter. I preach it. If your gut tells you don't walk down that street, turn around. Every guy's a pig. I tell her that all the time. There are none of them under the age of 25 worth a nickel. So turn and go the other way. With that gut feeling, be suspicious. The multiple step process is critically important. Multiple steps, articulated, justifiable, reasonable. Please, please, please build those into the process, into your respective process. Oversight, and review. Continue to preach that every single day. The approval process. Does it have to be just with you? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. You put us out of business if you do it another way, rather than just being you. And believe me, I could use the folks and the man hours, Put us out of business. Please, please, please have multiple approval processes, particularly with dollars. I talked just briefly, but be cognizant of misplaced trust in that person you've known forever. They're human beings. And putting that much trust and that much confidence in an individual is a concoction for disaster. Please, give them help. Make them take their time off. Make someone else step in to do that job to reconcile what it is they've done before they went away, you see. It's all human behavior. It's all human behavior. Rotating responsibilities. Another, automatic built-in audit system, audit structure, audit means. Rotate responsibilities, even as complicated as that might be. Succession planning should be at the forefront of all of our minds. The only thing guaranteed is today, and tomorrow is no guarantee. We've heard that for our lifetimes. It's so very true. Imagine putting all that confidence and trust in one person and something bad happening to them, and you wonder now, what do you do? And then you find the errors. No, it's too late then. It's too late. I've got a couple of, Dave, how much time do I have? Okay, I'll get through this quickly. I really want there to be some questions. You know what I think? I think I'm going to go right past these examples and go into what we've done over the course of the last, here it is, 3 years. And I'll go through this quickly because I really want there to be some time for questions and answers. In 2012, the public official investigations that were initiated by the ISP, 46% of them were law enforcement officers from police agencies, around Indiana. 11% were corrections and jailers. City offices were 11%, county offices were 12%. Those crimes ranged from a whole list, but I'll just hit some of hit the top 5. Theft, number 1. Battery, number 2. Ghost employment, child molestation, and official misconduct. Those were the top 5 in 2012. In 2013, 47% law enforcement, 8% corrections, 11% towns, and 13% county offices. Again, the top 5, battery, forgery, ghost employment, official misconduct, and theft. And in 2014 to date, 50% law enforcement, 5% city offices, and 23% county offices. So in 2014, county office investigations doubled. And we go back to a common theme of battery, ghost employment, intimidation, and theft. And theft's always number 1 or number 2. Now that covers a whole gamut of things over time. But there is an absolute pattern here that we think and completely believe can be mitigated over time and almost completely abolished. But if we get to the point where we feel like we're transparent and untouchable, something bad will happen to you. Something bad will happen. So I guess in closing, I could get on a lot of soapboxes, but I won't. If you have to ask yourself if what you're about to do is wrong, it is. And if you have to ask yourself if it is right, it probably isn't. Because you'll know. So in closing, a couple of comments. Please do what you can do to help us reinstill trust in our communities. Not just ISP and what I represent, but all public safety agencies around Indiana. We hire human beings, ladies and gentlemen, and they're going to make mistakes. They're just like you. They're going to make mistakes. Challenge for a guy like me is to hold them accountable, and rest assured I will. Of all the things that are happening on the global scale, right now specifically in the United States, just makes me ill in my heart and in my soul. Why? Because I know that 99.9% of police officers in America would die for someone that hates who they are. they would die for someone that hates who they are. And with what's occurring right now, it's never been more important that when I get an opportunity to stand at this podium and talk to folks like you, that I say that. We are not without sin. We are not, and we never will be, because we're human beings. There's the only person that's without sin isn't amongst us in body. So I hope that you'll continue to partner with us. I hope that if you have a question, you'll call. And before I open it up, I want to give you my email address. It's dcarter@isp.in.gov. I try very hard to respond to every email I get every day, and I try to do that by the end of the day. Now, the end of the day could be late in the evening prior to 12 midnight, but if you send a question to me or a comment, or if it's urgent that you talk with me, I hope that you'll call or drop an email to me. My direct line to my desk is area code 317-232-0620. I'm going to ask Troy and Donna to come forward, please. I will talk about anything except a speeding ticket. So we can talk about that privately if you would like. But I really want you to feel comfortable. If you have a question, a comment, a suggestion, a criticism, whatever it might be, now is the time. I'll take the criticism, and the praise can go to the folks walking up here. So the floor is yours. I'm not going to call on anybody. I'm not. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Kate, and I very much appreciate what you had to say. Do you have that presentation available somewhere for us for some of the things that we may have missed?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's all. Everything that I've got here is a public record, so it all came from those files. So absolutely, kick an email to me, and I will scan it and get it forwarded to you. You bet. The historical perspective is pretty interesting, isn't it? Yeah, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
If you're working in a county office and you suspect misuse of public funds, you're not sure of it, would you recommend reaching out to you guys first, State Board of Accounts?
State Board of Accounts. Our job is to investigate criminal acts. And just a suspicion of one, generally speaking, is we would not jump out in front of that. We would probably refer it right over to the State Board of Accounts.
You're talking about a ghost employee. Is that somebody that they decided to put some money in their own pocket instead of with somebody else? Or?
No, that would be an employee who's showing up, who's a paid county employee, not an elected county employee, but a paid county employee who's showing up at your work or at their work and working on a private business or doing another function while they're being paid as a county employee. Or not showing up to work, correct.
And we find that happens a lot, especially the smaller counties, where the elected officials have several family members that are on their payroll. And a lot of times those come to our attention because State Board of Accounts will audit the payroll, and the person is either being overpaid, maybe a contract, or just simply doesn't have a job, but is yet they're receiving some paychecks for work that's never been performed. And it's hard when it's your own family, but that's probably the number one ghost employment that I've worked. It's been a direct family member of an elected official.
The most recent one that I've been made aware of is a county councilman that works in a county office. And that right and left limit is a bit blurry. But if he or she's working in that county office, they can't be doing the business of elected official and vice versa, you see. So very, very, very important. Yes, ma'am.
What is your rule for emails? Because I know some staff have a very difficult time deciding what's personal and what's business. So do you have
You mean from a public records request?
or just emails in general?
Emails, audit them. Audit them. Grab each month, every 2 weeks, trigger that random poll of emails from a certain date to a certain date. Maybe it could be 2 or 3 days, and review those for the folks that work for you. The public request, we deal with that all the time, and it's really complicated. Was it deliberative? Was it investigative? Was it related to an internal investigation, whatever it might be? Those public records requests are very, very difficult for us to manage. I can only imagine it's the same for you, because you've got to go through every single one of them line by line and decide, does it fall under that public records release, the FOIA, or where is it? And then pull the ones that aren't, and it's pretty complicated. Come on. Yes, sir.
I think I'm actually in the county, you're talking about the councilman that's working for the county. What's the next step for that? Does he have to resign, or is there a certain protocol for that?
If there was a ghost employment issue, what happens if it's an elected official?
As far as conflict of interest, like you're talking where he's on the council, that has a day job for the county too.
As long as they don't overlap or conflict, and I think the situation the superintendent's talking about is, you can still hold both those positions, you just can't be in your county office doing your commissioner duties. I mean, and really there are some public or elected official positions where there is a conflict and it's up front, so you know you can't hold two positions. But in that case, and correct me if I'm wrong, as long as the two don't overlap and he is getting paid on county while he's on county to do the county commissioner job. And they have to do it knowingly and intentionally. I mean, we've actually investigated several cases, and one that I can think of is a surveyor case. And we had a great case. The county prosecutor reviewed it. I mean, the guy in this particular had a private survey company where he did private mortgages, and he had his employees out doing the surveys for his private business while he was paying them to work for the county. And they were even going outside of the county to do that. I mean, that's knowing and intentionally. And you have to prove those two elements in order for the prosecutor to pick those up.
Yeah, actually, there's a new statute that really goes into effect now where you cannot be an employee and an elected official of the same unit of government. So at the end of this year, I think that has kicked in for everyone. There was kind of a phase-out period. So starting in January, I mean, there's always circumstances that make, nuances, but in generally, it's going to be you cannot be an elected official and an employee of the same unit of government. So that should stop in January. So. Yeah. So I want to again thank the superintendent and his staff for coming out here today. And we talked about this in our office. Is this the first presentation we wanted you to hear? And it is, because again, no matter what office you're in, you're a leader in your community, and you need to be watching out for the taxpayers. And you're going to hear this a lot tomorrow from the Board of Accounts. The way to avoid a lot of this is just to have good internal controls within the county so that if somebody does slip up, you catch it almost immediately. I mean, I just can't tell you, when I've talked to the Board of Accounts, right, they go in and they find somebody, and the first thing they hear is, well, we never would have suspected him or her, but they've been doing it for 20 years. And, it's $10 here, it's $20 there, and then at the end of 20 years, they add it up and they say, well, it's $300,000, and they say, well, I didn't take $300,000. It was just a little bit, here and there, but that's what it ends up being. And so the way to try to avoid that is to have really good internal controls and to be on watch for it. And again, you don't want to be so suspicious you accuse everyone of everything, but it is your responsibility to be on watch for taxpayers in the county. And again, no matter what office, what county, advocate good internal controls to avoid this from happening. So again, thanks, Doug. So appreciate it. So.